To freely walk the streets that once held so much terror is testimony to the remarkable changes that have come to Cali. But where did it all begin? This story, like all transformation accounts, is rooted in the hearts of intercessors, men and women who had ears to hear what God was saying.
God spoke to us that we should come to Cali.
Ruth Ruibal and her husband Julio came to Cali in 1978. They were dismayed at the utter darkness that had settled over the city. But Julio was convinced that if the people of God would join together and pray, the enemy's grip would be broken. There was just one problem. No one wanted to do this.
It wasn't really unity among the churches. You did your thing, and I say, God bless you, brother, and have a wonderful time in your church, but this is my church, and this is what I do.
The Pastors Association used to consist of nothing more than a box of files. Every pastor was working separately on his own. No one would join together.
Following a disagreement, Julio pulled out of the already weak Pastors Association. But then he realized he was contributing to the disunity.
God spoke to him and told him, you don't have the right to be offended, and you have to forgive. And he took that message and he realized, he said, if I'm going to reflect Jesus, I cannot be offended anyway.
Julio went back to the pastors and begged their forgiveness. They could not afford to walk in disunity, not when their city faced such overwhelming challenges.
We started realizing, well, what hope do we have? We had all these international organizations plus all the Colombian authorities against the Cali cartel, and nothing ever happened.
So being concerned for this, we started praying and interceding and asking the Lord to show us how to pray, and that's how He took us to understand our spiritual roots.
To gain God's perspective on their city, local churches began to examine the spiritual dynamics in their immediate neighborhoods.
One of the things we would do was Randy would give out maps of the city, and the government has it divided like in different areas, zones. And within those zones there are many neighborhoods, so we would divide the church up into these zones, and according to the neighborhood where they lived, then they had to bring back information of all of the problems that they saw that were occurring, that were reoccurring, very strong problems within their area.
One troubling discovery was the city's deep involvement with the occult. Even the macho drug lords were active clients of mediums and spiritual guides.
Had very strong roots of occultic practices, and that was mixed in with the religious leadership, and that gave them power, aside from the power that they already had with their money.
As they began to address specific strongholds over the city, Cali's pastors felt God leading them to assemble their people for an evening of joint worship and prayer.
At the beginning, the problem was people saying, it won't work. The people might not come. And many opposed it, but we had leaders that dared to do things. They dared, understanding that it was God's will.
In '95, we had our first all-night prayer meeting.
Did you feel the mountains tremble?
And they prayed against principalities and powers. They prayed for unity. They believed in God to see Him move in the churches.
The mayor at that time got on the platform, prayed for Cali and said, Cali belongs to Jesus Christ. And with those words, when the Christians heard them from the city authority, that was a confirmation of what the Holy Spirit was doing in the city.
48 hours after the event, the daily newspaper headlined, "No Homicides." For the first time in as long as anyone could remember, Cali had gone an entire weekend without a single murder. A newsworthy event in a city used to seeing upwards of 15 killings per day.
After these major prayer events, united prayer events were going on, that's when we started seeing the results.
And 10 days later, the first drug lord fell. And God was changing the city.
Fling wide you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord.
Encouraged by the spiritual momentum generated by the first all-night prayer vigil, church leaders decided to rent the largest venue in the city, the 55,000-seat Pascual Guerrero Soccer Stadium. Their faith was amply rewarded when more than 60,000 believers showed up to pray and worship across denominational lines. During the summer of 1995, the Colombian government declared all-out war against the drug lords. 6,500 elite commandos were dispatched to Cali with explicit orders to round up the cartel's ringleaders.
There were 7 top drug lords. 6 had fallen in those 9 months when we really started praying together.
The whole spiritual atmosphere of the city of Cali has changed.
While Julio was encouraged by God's handiwork, he faced opposition in his own backyard. A neighbor, angry over disputed property rights, threatened to kill him.
So Julio said, I'm going to fast and pray until I know what's happening. So he was fasting, and on 3rd day, God spoke to him, and he said, he will do you great damage, but from what he does, the revival in Cali will spring forth.
I want to tell you people, this is a very dangerous thing that we're doing here tonight.
He had a meeting with the Pastors Association, the board.
I was waiting for him with the other pastors at 2 o'clock that afternoon.
He told us to drop him off.
The chauffeur kept saying, no, let me take you to the door. Let me wait with you.
But I said, no, just leave me here. I can walk.
He got out. He started walking towards the church.
2 hitmen were waiting in ambush for him.
That was the last time I saw him.
I got a call and they said, they just killed Julio. And I said, nah, how can they kill a pastor? So I went to the place thinking he was just hurt. But when I got there, he was lying on his side like a baby. Julio, the noisy one, the active one, the man who just never sat still, there he was lying like a baby.
When they first told me about it, you're in shock. You can't believe it really happened. And as I arrived, his body was still on the street. There was a pool of blood by his head where he had been shot. The verse that came to me just by the Spirit of God was, precious in the eyes of the Lord are the death of the saints. And as I just stepped out and sat next to his body, I knew I was on holy ground. And I just said, Lord, I know that you know everything in our hearts, but this I have to say, it is well with my soul. This is what you wanted, and it's well with my soul.